I am Cicely Gay. I am the founder and CEO of The Amplifiers, which is a nonprofit philanthropic consulting firm standing at the intersection of cause and communications. But I am also so proud to be the board chairwoman of Black Lives Matter. I am a sister and a friend and a daughter. I am a mother who has raised three sons without the benefit of a partner. And yes, I am now the board chairwoman of Black Lives Matter. And so there are lots of moments throughout my life in those roles that have led me to this place. I recognized very early on, when I gave birth to my first son in high school, that I was going to need some help. And through receiving that help, through collective community, through learning and growing, I learned that I drink from wells that I did not dig. And I have a tremendous amount of responsibility to give back. And so I devoted my life to service, not only because I love it, but also because I recognize that strategy is necessary when you're building nonprofits and philanthropy. And my first nonprofit job was actually in AmeriCorps. It's the Corporation for National Community Service, where I gave a year of service and time to pay for college. And it changed my life. I was working with young women in the shadows of the penitentiary in Atlanta and building after-school programs for them. And I realized I had so much to give, and I wasn't necessarily someone who always needed to ask for help. But that also, my story was one that people could learn from and could use. And I think that set me on the trajectory towards service, and ultimately that got me here. For a very long time, I was the youngest in the room in professional settings. I earned my way up through the ranks, and I learned by watching and listening. And so one of the things that I know is that everyone has value, particularly when we're in professional settings. And a lot of times people who are young are dismissed because their ideas maybe are not as baked or as seasoned as others. And so I think recognizing that I had a lot to give and share when I was young means that I also value the voices that are diverse, but also, represent real life lived experiences of people who come to the table and can help us grow this movement and grow this work. It's so fascinating when people actually acknowledge this time we're in and this space of BLM and the significance of what this movement has been and the responsibility of where we need to go. And I think that's it. I take this very seriously. And leadership for me means not just saying go, but encouraging people to say, let's go. And that we do this together, that people don't necessarily need to be left behind, and there can be a place for them if they want to be involved. But also, to my original point, that I have a tremendous amount of responsibility and a lot of work to do. And leadership is not something that's a light switch, right? That I can just turn off and turn back on. It permeates every avenue of my life. I have to think about, how I move and who I talk to and how I show up online and offline in meetings, how I show up when I go to the store, because someone may interact with me that I may not have expected to meet that day. And so it's now a part of me. It's something that I'm so proud of and I take very seriously, and hopefully that other people will learn from along the way. That has been one of the toughest jobs to tackle, and it's one that's actually taken a lot of strategy. So, white supremacist ideology is a machine, right? It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so when we're trying to figure out how to combat it and create a new way, you have to be strategic. And there are lots of people with ideas and concepts and voices that have been telling us what to do. The reality is we had to stop for a moment and get the books right. So I think the first thing that I want to be very clear about in terms of this new leadership is that we've opened up a transparency center at blacklivesmatter.com where we've done just that. The tax forms are there. A list of all of the grantee organizations who have received funding is there. 2 external independent audits are there. Our own credentials as new board members are there. And it's worked. Yeah, I'm really excited that particularly over the course of the last year, when we become more public facing, there have been larger organizations like NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Urban League. I was just with Ben Crump and his team that are bringing us to the table and saying, we get it, this is new leadership now, and maybe some of the examples of things that have happened in the past wouldn't have been the way that I moved, or the way that this leadership moved. They're giving us an opportunity. And it's been really beautiful to see how many Black people still believe in Black Lives Matter. It's a people's movement. It's ours, right? And so we have a lot of responsibility to build it the right way, and transparency and honesty has been a part of that, both online, but in also all of the ways that I interact with people. When I do interviews like this, I generally don't have any questions that are not on the table. And I say, I don't have anything to hide. I'm going to tell you the truth. And if I'm wrong, correct me. If something happened before me, I'm going to explain that it happened before me. My whole life has been put out for public consumption in many ways. And so at this point, I'm transparent not only as it relates to the organization and what's happened in the past, but the path we want to chart forward. And I hope that people want to be a part of it. And I'm so encouraged when they show up and demonstrate that they do. It's a challenge in a world that, or a country, frankly, and sometimes a world that wasn't built for us, but was by us. And so as leaders of this organization, we not only had to look at our collective strengths and be honest about what those were, but also listen to what our people need, and that's love and joy and hope. The expanse of Black life is not just about Black death. And I think when I talk about strategy, I mentioned I've built nonprofits and I've worked in foundations. That means preventative measures before we get to the point where we're at a protest or we've lost another stolen life. And so what that means for us is investing in education and arts and research and policy and culture. People are surprised often to say that arts is one of our strategic pillars. It's one I'm most passionate about. There's never been a time where Black liberation has not been connected to art, right? From songs of our enslaved ancestors to the civil rights movement to the Harlem Renaissance to even now during the BLM protest, we are a broad people with a lot to give. And if we undergird that with love, then I don't think there's anything that we can't do. And so that's the new mission and the new work, not only about Black death. Yes, we will continue always to fight against state-sanctioned violence, but absolutely making sure that at the core of everything we do is love. And that's right for me because I say often that love is my superpower. I'm a Black mama and I lead with love as often as I can. And so when I look at what I bring to the table, it's work through that lens. One of the things that we've done with this new wave of leadership is actually go back to our elders to get advice about how to do things the right way. And one of those elders is Elaine Brown, who was the first chairwoman of the Black Panther Party. And she's let us know that they did things through their clothing, right? They were like, Black people look the way that we dressed, and we would get their attention by looking fly, right? That's culture, that's art, right? And sometimes that's what you use if you want people to listen to you and follow you. And so whether people have embraced art as a traditional means of expression or art through fashion or clothes, it's always been a part of who we are, and it's a powerful tool to make sure we move the culture forward. I think we have to be really intentional about who we partner with. I know that we have to be really firm in our foundation before we present it publicly. So I mentioned that there's no dearth of feedback. We're constantly getting people who are telling us what we need to be doing. They don't have all of the information. And so what we have to do as leadership is make sure that we're very strong. We say often that we are building it this time so that it does not break. And that is the difference that we're making. We're being intentional about it. Sometimes it may look a little bit slow, but it's not. It's wisdom. It's seeking guidance from people who have been here before, and injecting that with the knowledge that we have about where we want to go and trying to build it right. I mean, just this week, I've had to write 2 statements about Black people whose lives have been stolen by state-sanctioned violence. And I would never consider that a distraction, but it absolutely is difficult when you're thinking about progress. And what I've got to remind myself of is that anytime there is Black progress, there's white backlash or white outrage. And that is why CRT, for instance, is under attack, or even words like woke are under attack, right? Our educational system is under attack. And so frankly, a lot of the time I pay attention to what people are mad about because it says to us that maybe we're moving in the right direction. And those are some of the things that not only we pay attention to as it relates to progress, but also our initiative moving forward. We know that we've got a new administration that's coming into play, and we're trying to stay ahead of that. And so, it's extremely important to us that we look at our wins, even if they appear on the surface to maybe be attacks, and lean into those, but also listen to our community. And it's been really dope to see how people have continued to ride for us. It's been amazing when I meet someone and they see me and they pull back their sleeve and they still have on a BLM wristband, or they still wear a t-shirt even though they may be harassed by whomever, or a flag. There's a guy in Atlanta that actually still stands on the street corner waving a BLM flag. That's encouraging. And it reminds me that we're not just doing this for ourselves as individuals. We're doing it for the power of collective community, and we still have a long way to go. But it gives me a lot of hope when I see how people support us and the movement. We've already seen it. I mean, the inauguration at this point hasn't happened, but we've seen how members of the administration feel on certain issues. Nonprofits in and of themselves are under attack. And so there's been a lot of legislation that's been introduced both in the House and Senate around stripping the nonprofit status from organizations that may be deemed terrorist. And frankly, BLM is on that list. And so we recognize that every single move we make is going to possibly be scrutinized or be used as evidence to dismantle the work that we've done and the organization that we're building. But we've got to stay 2 steps ahead. We have to recognize that we're on a greater mission. Fortunately, in this country, presidents don't stay in office forever. And so we have to be encouraged and ready for the next administration while continuing to do the work that we're doing right now, particularly if we're under threat. One of the great things about our new leadership is that when I mentioned strategy, we went back and said we've got to have 6 strategic pillars of our work. So a lot of the people understand BLM as a crisis response, crisis management, even GoFundMe, right? That's not strategic. It works, and it's a framework as it relates to protest and movement building that is effective, but it can't be the only thing we do. So in our 6 strategic pillars that we build, I mentioned arts, I mentioned education and research, we actually have healing justice, frontline organizing, culture, and policy. And so the hard answer to your question is that we actually have a policy shop that we're building out with legislative advisors that are raising our voices on Capitol Hill. We have a partnership with a PAC called BLM PAC, a political action committee that's actually raising funds to support and run Black candidates who are interested in progressive issues. And also we want to make sure that people still have a voice. It's a people-centered movement. We do live in a democracy, and so we want to elevate the voice of the people. So we're doing it from the grassroots and the grass tops, so the treetops rather, just making sure that at every turn we're addressing whatever policies are right for Black people. One of them that's atop of our list is qualified immunity, and has been. We held the Biden administration accountable for that, ensuring that when there is state-sanctioned violence that occurs, that people can be accountable for it and don't just get a desk job, or move to another location. And we'll continue to ensure that we've got legislators who are on our side that are putting those policies at the forefront and fighting for Black people at every turn. I have a beautiful mentor who reminds me, Cicely, give yourself to yourself before you give yourself away. She often says, put your oxygen mask on first. And As a funder now, I challenge not only my colleagues, but others in the funder community to not just fund the revolution, but to fund the recovery. We've been talking about the inauguration and what Black women are going to do or not do, right? The Black Women's Day off. It's okay to say, I'm not working today. I'm taking care of myself and my health and my family and my loved ones, and I'm going to pour into myself today. And I think that's really, really important. I mentioned leaning on the wisdom of elders, and there was another former Black Panther that I met, and I said, what would you all have done differently? And she said two things. She said, one, we would have had a stronger spiritual component, right? And we've seen some other movements and organizations like Nation of Islam who obviously have figured that one out. And then the other, she said, is that we would take care of ourselves better. We would have a wellness component. Now, we honor certainly the work of the Panthers. We know that the breakfast program that many public schools have right now came from them. Health insurance programs came from them. But it really enlightened me to the prioritization of wellness and health when she said, spirit and wellness was something that we could have done better. And so my short answer, although it's not as calculated, is that we just got to take care of ourselves. One of the projects that we created is called the Student Solidarity Fund. So when the student loan programs were stalling and school was starting back primarily for HBCU students, we brought together a group of the people we call HBCU ambassadors. And they came to the Creators House, which is our property in Los Angeles, and we sat with them and we listened to them. And they said that HBCUs, as many of us know, me included, as the mom of two sons who went to HBCUs, are a beacon of excellence and light, but oftentimes our students at HBCUs are struggling. And so what we did was start funding directly HBCU students. We gave out gift cards directly to the students, not through the schools, so that they could buy books, so that they didn't have to sleep in their cars. They can maybe get a hotel room for a night, that they, could buy food. And so we want to continue to grow initiatives under our education pillar like that to support HBCU students wherever they are. I'm particularly excited about that one. But there are so many others. The Creators House I mentioned is going to be a home for artists. We'll have a fellowship program where they can build and create art. That house in Studio City has been the subject of a lot of news and misinformation. It has 20 parking spaces. It has a sound stage in the back. It is an event space where we have meetings, where we gather, where we grow and we build together. We actually just partnered with an organization that came in and used the space for an artist to retreat. And so we want to continue to have a home for artists to bond and build with one another, as another example. When Black Lives Matter was started, unlike many organizations, there was no copyright around the name, right? It wasn't copyrighted. And so there are chapters who have popped up all over the country. Many of them have done phenomenal work. $35 million from that $90 million that poured in actually went to chapters. And there's so many more organizations and chapters that are operating under the moniker of Black Lives Matter. That now the federal government has said there can be no ownership of the name. I could start my own Black Lives Matter organization right now, and there's nothing that we, as the largest organization holding the majority of the assets, can do about it. But what we have decided to do is to engage with students in ways that feel chapter oriented, right? So there are so many young people who want to learn about organizing. They want to have instructions from older people about how to collaborate and build. And so one of our initiatives that is coming in 2025 is just that. We're going to expand the student solidarity work through HBCUs, but also have a very similar chapter-based model, partnering directly with students on campuses where they are. One of the best ways to address the criticism is to show up and to demonstrate that you are who you say you are. To be consistent and consistently pound the pavement, telling the truth, but also demonstrating where people can go to research information for themselves. I had no intention, to be completely honest with you, about being a public spokesperson for this organization. This is my fourth nonprofit board. I have served on 4 boards nonprofit organizations and foundations and never made a peep in the news. Who is the board chair of the NAACP? People don't know, right? Who's the board chair of the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club? All of these organizations have much larger budgets than Black Lives Matter. But as the board chair of this organization, I have been put into the spotlight. And so because of that, I've had to make sure that I am telling the truth in everywhere, in every space, with everyone, everywhere that I possibly can. And that's the best way to do it. I learned a long time that a lying tongue only lasts a moment, but the truth endures forever. And so as long as I am showing up and telling the truth as I know it, and the organization can back it up with receipts, then for me, that's the absolute best way for us to address the misinformation and disinformation that exists. I certainly know that as arguably the largest civil rights and social justice organization to ever exist, we will have a deep legacy beyond me. I want to be a good ancestor. So I want to be someone that my three Black sons are proud of, but also their children and their children. I want people to tell the story that through the controversy and through the fire, there were leaders and organizers and experts who still believed in us and fought for us and the power of collective care and collective community. And so in the next 5 years, we'll be working to build toward that legacy. What that means is as a foundation, we want to fund and fuel movements. So we want to raise money. We want to build a creator economy where Black people are keeping their creative intellect and the rights and licenses to the things that they birth and build. And we're doing that strategically through some of these programs. And so in 5 years, I hope that when I'm speaking to people with Black Lives Matter, they're thanking us about how we've turned the tide and not doubting us about some of the challenges of the past, and that we can link arms and aims and come together to continue to build this movement and this work. We certainly have a board, but we also have staff members who are experts in strategy, legal strategy. One thing that we decided to do right this time was hire attorneys and accountants. And so I have people who are much wiser than I that have my back when it comes to kind of the marathon of the slow run around building the movement. And then others who are seasoned as it relates to crisis management. But I actually met Kamala Harris when she was a senator, and I remember being in the room with her, and there was a group of women entrepreneurs, and they challenged me with asking a question of the group. And I had researched her career at that point, even before she was vice president, was running for president, and saw some of the accomplishments she had made on the West Coast. And so I said to her, "How do you know where to begin? Right? You've got all of these things that you want to see fixed." And she said, "There's no problem that's too small to solve." And so for me, I think about personally what breaks my heart. And the things that keep me up at night, I know are keeping other mothers up at night, or keeping other fathers up at night. And so when I'm thinking about a prioritization of where I put my efforts and my heart and my love, it's just that. It's what keeps me up at night. And what is that voice that's in my own head, my own spirit, whatever we believe, that's telling us that this is something that other people may be feeling and that I'm in this position to address. Black lives are sacred. They still matter, always and in all ways. This is actually easy, although I get a little bit emotional when I think about the impact that she's had on my life. It is Susan L. Taylor, who was the editor-in-chief of Essence magazine for over 37 years. She is a race woman, someone who I have had the privilege of sitting at her feet and learning from. I actually started working for her because she was building a nonprofit after she left Essence magazine. I have my own philanthropic consulting firm, and she hired me to help build this nonprofit and raise money and find mentoring opportunities for Black children. And after a while, as a mother raising three sons, it became a lot, right? And I was traveling, I was home, and I wasn't investing in my own household the way that I thought I should. And I said, you know what, I think I want to consult. I want to pull it back a little bit and consult. And I remember sitting in front of her and her telling me, well, then I will be your first client. And she's shown up for me every day in every way like that. She's the real deal. She is who she says she is. She has blazed a trail for Black people that is visionary and heartfelt and authentic and true. And she's poured into my life, not just professionally, but personally in ways that I will never be able to repay.